Hi, everyone. I'm Ross Bailey, and I'm the founder and CEO of Appear Here. I'm here with Michelle, writer and author, former editor-in-chief of Elle Decoration, and the head judge of Interior Design Masters, which was on last night. Michelle, thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. How was it for you then, Ross?
Yeah, the debut. It was fun. I think that, like, obviously when you're there in person, it's very different to the sort of edit afterwards. And I know that we were, I think the retail challenge in particular is really, really hard because these guys have no time and they've got a tiny, tiny budget and they've literally got like a couple of days, right? So I think that it was a difficult task for them. And on top of that, it's not just about the way things look. I think I was there to be more about like, what's the experience for the customer and would this work as a store? And I think that added an extra level of like difficulty to maybe some of the other tasks.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like the ultimate challenge because, I mean, each week it's kind of like we're pushing them to learn a bit more and to understand a bit more about the whole depth and breadth of like interior design. And in shops, you've got to make it look good because otherwise no one's going to come through the door. But it's got to work. So, it's this sort of complex engineering of how do you get the customer around the store, where do you sell, pay, all of that kind of stuff. But then there was the X factor. So whatever the kind of, if you like, whether we're dealing with hairdressers or restaurants or whatever, it's that X factor that keeps the person in there and keeps them wanting to come back. And that's really what we were kind of looking for this time, in which case it was about that thing we love to talk about, the customer journey. It's all about them. What makes this place special? Why should this shop even exist? When I can buy everything online. I mean, that's what you're going to jump in and say.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that final point about why should this exist? It was like, I think that's the big thing is often people go, okay, shop, that means selling. And actually, I think shop means connection. It means meeting. It means, community. It means all of these things that's more than selling. And actually, I think one thing that, people need to think about when they're thinking about designing a shop is that especially these little specialty stores, in many ways, some of these are like nearly extinct species, right? Like the way you can buy, lots of things now online very simply. But the reason we still want to go to stores, the reason we still go on that pilgrimage for the shop we love is because we want the person behind it. We want to get their expertise. We want to have a conversation and connect. And that's so much more than just buying. It's about, you said the journey, those moments, the experience. And I think that sometimes that can be forgotten. It's very much about how do we create this efficient space where people can buy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mary Portas wrote the report, like I looked it up, it's 10 years ago. And I mean, I think she summarized it as it's kind of experience, service and specialism, because those are the things. And it was kind of bringing the stories alive of these people. So it's not just a product story, it's about why is this person so passionate about this thing that they wanted to kind of put their livelihood on the line for it.
And the exciting thing, Michelle, is what we've seen over the last few years, especially up here, is that when it's done well, when you see that independent bookstore or that place where the person behind it is so passionate, you just can't match it, And I think that you also think about like young people and how stores represent so much more than just buying. They are about community. They're about like who you are. Like you think about like the cool little surf shop or the skateboarding shop, and people go there to find their people, to find the people that they belong to. And you can't do that in your bedroom. I think we've all realized that over COVID. There's such an importance of what these stores do to culture and the livelihoods behind them. So 100% agree.
But I think the thing is though that the big question is when everything opens up again, how are we all going to do things differently? And I think there has to be this awakening of like normal before didn't work. A lot of people shopped out of anxiety or like, oh, when I buy the thing, then I'll feel better. I think one of the things of lockdown has made a lot of people also realize that actually I need less than I thought. And I'm often asked by people kind of like, oh, I want to start up a business or I want to become a designer. What's your advice for me? And it's always, and this applies to shops as well, it's like, what is your point of view? What do you stand for? What makes you different from anyone else? Because the bottom line is we don't need any more chairs or cushions or podcasts or books or any of this stuff unless they serve to change a narrative. I think we need
100%.
provocation, we need difference. And if a shop can offer me that, or like you say, it's also about the community. So it's not just a running shop that sells trainers, but if that becomes a hub, and that's where I go to do my meetings, or I go to do weigh-ins, or I go to find out about nutrition, or the bookstore is offering classes for children during the holidays. And some people are doing this, but a lot of people aren't. And so the sort of big elephant in the room is that quite a lot of these brands, frankly, don't deserve to stay in existence unless they're prepared to really seriously evolve beyond just product.
100%. And I think, though, what we've got to also remember is that the retail that we often talk about, which is mass consumption, it's about how do you get a store, put as much product as possible in one space and open up as many stores as possible and scale it. That really only existed since the late 80s. And actually, the retail that's existed since ancient Greece. And you talk about the word agora, which translates to gathering place, where bricks and mortar buildings were created, where people would go to exchange goods and exchange stories and exchange things that they found, whether it's spices or ivory, on their travels. That retail has continued for the whole of civilization. And you realize now, I think more than ever during COVID, when we were shut down and we literally couldn't go and couldn't connect, is how important this stuff is to our way of life. And I think that kind of retail, in many ways, looking at the past to look at the future, is about exactly what you said, speciality, is about a point of view, is about that real localism as well. And I think more as we become so connected to technology, as we become more connected, we want the exact opposite. It's like everything has those two contrasting forces, right? And the more technology focused we become, the more we want community and hyper-localism. The more global we become, the more we care about our streets and where we live. And I think that will be a positive. And I think 100% there's an opportunity here for a sort of complete renaissance of our streets. And the thing that I'm excited by up here is we've seen tens of thousands of stores launch over the last couple of years, which were these incredible stories from incredible entrepreneurs that are pursuing their dreams and wanting to share it.
I mean, that's it's about excitement, isn't it? You want to be excited to sort of get back to when shopping was about kind of just looking at beautiful stuff and hanging out with your friends, but also entertainment. I mean, I was thinking, like, what am I most looking forward to sort of opening up? And it actually isn't so much of a shop, but it is almost exactly what you described with this sort of idea of the agora, because I live in Brighton, and here we quite often have these lovely local markets, but
I love them. Yeah, we do a lot of them.
They'll be kind of like chocolate, and it'll be kind of 20 different stores all selling a different type of chocolate, and there's tasting, and there's kids, and there's entertainment, and there's a band, and it becomes a kind of a whole kind of gathering about the idea of chocolate. And that's so much more compelling than just like a shop that has got bars laid out and maybe I can get hot chocolate at the same time. And I think if we can get some of that energy and excitement and vitality into kind of physical places, I mean, that to me is the answer. And it's not going to be about decor. It's about the people. It's about the people running it. It's about them trying to kind of aim at other people as well. So it's sort of like, forget the product. Think about the person. Think about how you're going to talk to me about your thing.
100%. And I think also coming out of this, it's sort of a fight for what's the sort of world we want. You think technology's got two great sides. One side is technology is democratized and given everyone the ability to access stuff. And what's great there is when you talk about the little tiny chocolate maker, or there's this amazing girl that launched a shop with us and her brand's called Grain and Knot. And she's got a huge Instagram following. Now, because of Instagram, she can make these beautiful wooden spoons, these things that are quite niche, that yet have this huge following. And people will get on the pilgrimage to go to her store because she's got this huge awareness. But the downside of technology, which has happened and accelerated during COVID, is you've got companies like Amazon that are becoming more and more powerful. And they are about just dictating what you buy. And it's all about how quickly you get it. And let's be frank, they're paying pretty much no tax. And you look at an independent store, and those stores, 70p out of every pound goes directly back into that local community. It employs people, it's people's livelihoods. And we have to question that when we decide where we're spending our money, if that's not coming back in, everything breaks down. So there's all these question marks about what really is a street. And I think that, the other piece that we often forget about is the real diversity. People in big technology companies, a lot of the same people. And you look at any high street in the country, and it's got the local immigrant, it's got people that have gone there to start their dream. It's often the first place that people begin. And that richness, you know, the 60s, the King's Road, whether it was the Rolling Stones, Vivienne Westwood, the Sex Pistols, everything comes from the street, and culture bubbles up from that. And if we don't have more voices participating, we have a very, I think, scary world where, you know, technology companies dictate not only what we buy, but frankly, as we've seen with politics over the last few years, what we believe in. So I think streets are so important to what you said with the future of retail, but so much more than buying and selling. It's about culture and how we're stitched together as a society, in my view.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think the only thing I would add is that for me as well, it's also about an edit. I mean, it's a different way of saying probably the same thing, but I used to love department stores. You know, back in the day, I would go and they were like galleries or museums of all these different brands, and I could just look and browse. I didn't have to buy anything, but they were exciting places. But then they became really generalized. You go into one, it's like, well, didn't I already see this? It's the same brands everywhere. And I started to really miss that, because that was kind of like retail subscribing to the kind of the buyer. It's like, well, these sold millions last season, so we just need to stock more of the same, but maybe change the color. And it's like, that's not driving anything forward. So to me, it's always about an edit as well. It's like, why also did you choose this product? What is the story behind that product as well? Where, you know, tell me about it. Like, that I need to know that you source this. And also I think that we know that our consumers are demanding these stories as well. We want to know,
and they're more educated than ever before.
Exactly. They want to know the ethics, the provenance, where did it come from, what's it made of, you know, from a candle to a cushion. I want to know that if I buy this, if I buy into this, then I am advocating for that provider to stay in business. And I think we're realizing that actually that has power, because you referenced government before, and I think that time of waiting for government to make all our decisions for us is kind of over. We actually have the power. We can dictate the way things go by choice, by conscious sort of, it's just conscious consumer choice. And I think that therein lies something like fantastically exciting.
100%. But Michelle, what you were just saying is quite interesting, that you sort of, with the department stores, because you look back at something like Selfridges, and Harvey Golden Selfridge, when the suffragette movement was happening, right, took over all the windows when suffragettes were literally a terrorist organization, and made all the windows about that cause. Or when the first plane went over the English Channel, within weeks, and you know, this before technology, Harvey Golden Selfridge tracked down the plane, took it apart piece by piece, and they rebuilt it. This machine that had suddenly flown a person in the air, they rebuilt it in the middle of the department store, and hundreds of thousands of people, through word of mouth, showed up to see the first plane. And you think, like, where has that showmanship gone? And it's completely to your point that somewhere along the lines, it's got lost by accountants. And I think that coming out of this, you know, the challenges we've got, huge unemployment, the challenges we've got is this emptying out of the high street. And frankly, a lot of it that's those sort of stores of the past that we were seeing that were going to go anyway. But what that leaves is a huge opportunity where you're going to have all these young creative people who need to do stuff, who need to come up with ideas, and you're going to have all of this available space where that can be their arena. So, you know, I think there's a real potential positive here. However, what we also need to make sure is that there are some things left to open up for, and that's why we're, I've spoken to you about this up here, where we've got this Save the Street campaign. You know, we've got some phenomenal backers. I'm so happy that you've agreed to back this as well. And it's really about making sure that those stores that represent exactly what you've spoken about, who will survive this, who are incredibly dynamic, have the ability to see this through and get the, I don't want to use the word compensation, but get the recognition, get the support from government that's intended, like every other industry's had. You know, you've seen the technology sector, you've seen the airline industry, all had government funds, and then the retail industry, biggest employer, you know, more small businesses than any of these other industries, and yet are getting no help. So thank you for offering to support that. And why do you believe in it? Why do you think this matters?
I think it matters because it's beyond consumerism. it is about community. It is about people. It's about bringing things together. And I think it's about motivation. I mean, I love the story about kind of, you know, Selfridge putting the aeroplane in there. And immediately what I'm thinking is he did that because it was an exciting, innovative thing to do, that he wanted to celebrate. And if people bought stuff afterwards, then all well and good. But the motivation, I think, was to create an event or to celebrate something in the community that was happening. And I think that's the difference, isn't it? It's about those brands that they want to do this because they're helping or they're bringing stuff together, not just because they're trying to shove stuff down our throats, that most of which for a long time we neither needed nor really wanted. And I think that is something that we've now all kind of seen, and we're demanding more. We're demanding more and we're demanding better. But I do think there is a whole new raft of people that can step up and deliver that. And that is something worth saving.
100%. So I believe in everything you've just said. And I God, I can't wait also just to like go and have a coffee and sit in a beautiful restaurant and go to the type of store you pictured. It's funny as well how some of those things that I think we did massively take for granted are now just going to be the most incredible experiences.